All right, today we're going to do something a little different. We're putting on our detective hats. We're going to treat data not as some boring spreadsheet, but as a crime scene, a place that's just full of hidden clues that, if you know how to look, can tell you the real story of what's happening inside a business.
So often we see messy data as a problem, something that we just have to clean up. But we need to flip that mindset entirely. An anomaly, something that just doesn't quite fit the pattern, it isn't a mistake. Nope, it's a clue. It's the beginning of an investigation that can reveal some really deep truths about how a company actually operates.
Okay, let's really dive into this. I want you to think of a company's entire data landscape as this sprawling crime scene. On the surface, yeah, it's just a collection of raw, kind of unorganized facts. But underneath all that chaos, there is a story just waiting to be told. And the first step for any good detective is to understand the evidence. Now, what's so interesting about this slide is the critical distinction it's making. See, data is just raw facts, like a giant list of every single sale a company has ever made. By itself, it's not all that useful. But when you start to analyze that data and you discover your most profitable customer demographic or your best-selling product by region, that is information. Our job as data detectives is to turn all that raw data into powerful, useful information. So, to see how this really works, let's open up our first case file, a local bike shop. By just examining its business data, we're going to uncover some very strange clues, and then we'll piece together what they actually mean for the business. Our first piece of evidence is a classic data anomaly. I mean, think about it. In a business with 701 stores, it is physically impossible for every single record to be updated at the exact same second. It just can't happen. What this tells us is that some kind of system-wide event happened, probably a one-time data import. The business has pretty much erased its own history, making it impossible to know when any single store's details were last actually updated. Okay, let's move on to our next clue, which we found hiding in the customer payment records. So the bike shop has over 19,000 credit cards on file, but look at the most common expiration years, 2007 and 2006. This isn't just old data, my friends. This is a digital graveyard. And this right here brilliantly illustrates the scale of the problem. We're talking about nearly 10,000 credit cards that expired almost 20 years ago. This data is totally useless for processing payments, and it makes any kind of analysis of customer purchasing power completely unreliable. It points to a business with no data retention policy, which, happens all the time when legacy systems just pile up old information and nobody is assigned to manage it. Sometimes the most important clue is what's not there. And here, we see huge gaps. The sales status is always 5, which means the whole story of the sale, from pending to shipped, is missing its beginning and its middle. Purchase order numbers, gone. And territory costs are all 0. This tells us that core business processes are just not being recorded, which creates these massive, critical blind spots. So, we have our clues: the impossible update, the digital graveyard, and the missing pieces. Now, who do we call to solve the case? Well, this brings us to the 2 types of investigators that we can consult. An AI detective is incredible at automated pattern recognition. It can scan millions of records in seconds and tell you, hey, all these dates are identical, or look at all these null values. But here's the catch. The AI is, it's blind to reason. It can't ask why. A human detective, on the other hand, a consultant with experience, brings context. They see the identical dates and ask, was there a system migration? They see the missing data and they know to go ask the sales team about their process. A human detective doesn't just look at clues in isolation, they connect them. This is done by following the data's lineage. It's like tracking its DNA, tracing it from a raw system file all the way to a business report. This is how you move from just finding oddities to actually solving major business problems. And a good investigation, it follows a clear method. It starts by defining what the business actually cares about, its critical metrics. Then, you link those business terms to the technical data fields. You build a case file. Think of it as a central database for all your clues, which is technically called a metadata mart, that organizes all this evidence. This is the crucial step that connects the technical jargon to business reality. Only then, with this foundation, can you empower real analysis that executives can actually use. Okay. Now let's see this methodology in a high-stakes, real-world case. A major healthcare provider, BCBS, was in week 10 of a failing $900,000 project. The team had generated tons of data profiles, but 0 actual business insight. This quote from the new chief analytics officer, wow, it just says it all.
The initial approach was totally superficial. The team had found patterns, sure, but they hadn't connected them to what mattered. They just told the executives they had dirty data, and the response was basically, so what's new? This is where our detective work needed to get really serious.
So, the team switched to the investigative method we just talked about. They linked the data to business terms, and within 6 weeks, the verdict was in. And the findings were shocking. We're talking thousands of bad Social Security numbers, dependents who were clearly way too old, PPO charges in the wrong counties, and duplicated patient records. These weren't just data quality issues. They were massive, costly business problems that were finally brought to light. So, what's the ultimate takeaway here? It's that data anomalies are so much more than just errors. They are clues that reveal deep, important truths about a business's processes and its problems. Your data is constantly telling a story. The only question is, are you listening for the clues?